So tonight it's all aboard. We're going to talk about the train and its history here in Romney. And I'm going to turn this mic over to Judge Cookman, who's going to give some more introductions.
Thank you, Carol. And I too would like to welcome everybody here this evening. I think it's pretty exciting that we have this big a crowd to come out on a Friday, a dreary Friday evening, I'd say. But I think you'll find this to be very interesting if you're willing to participate. And this is not going to be the usual presentation where somebody just gets up and makes a speech about what they know about history. This is going to be a give and take situation. And also, it's going to be memories that need to be jogged maybe from time to time. So my only responsibility is to maybe from time to time ask some questions that will jog our speaker's memory as to what he remembers as far as the depot is concerned in particular and Romney in general. But frankly, I think his memory is much better than mine. So my jogging is going to come from my written notes.
His memory's great.
It is, it's wonderful. But I would like to welcome you officially to the Welcome Aboard with Norwood. Our speaker, as you know, is Norwood Haines. He was born in 1921 here in Romney. His parents and his birthplace were actually at the corner of Charlevoix Place and Main Street, which is the Dillon's Furniture, former Calvert building, and Bob and Cleve Golf Station, if some of you remember it as that later on, or earlier rather. Norwood's parents were Arlo and Ethel. Arlo was from Little Capon and Ethel from North River. They, like I said, lived here in Romney, and that's where Norwood was born. Norwood graduated from Romney High School in 1940. He attended Potomac State College in Kaiser for a year and then went off to work in Baltimore at the Glen L. Martins, where he worked for about a year, no, about 3 years.
Yeah,
3 years. About a year, okay. And then left that place of employment and went into the United States Army, where he served for 3 years. After that, his real work history, I guess you'd say, started. And he started with the Coppers Company down in Greenspring. So he knows a lot about not only Romney, but also Greenspring and the area between Romney and Greenspring, because he traveled that every day to go to work. And he worked there about 5 years and then was transferred in the Coppers Company to Richmond, Virginia, where he lived for 15 years. And then was transferred to Pittsburgh, again with Coppers, and lived there and worked there for 15 years. He retired at age 60 and returned to Romney and built a house, and has been a resident of Romney ever since. He was married to Dorothy Shanholcher, now deceased, and she was from east of Romney. He has 3 daughters. Susan is from Pittsburgh, and she's here with us tonight. And Dottie is from Richmond. She's also here with us tonight, and her husband Sam. And he has another daughter, Sharon, who splits up her time between Richmond and Florida, Sanibel, Florida. Like I said, my job is going to be simple. I'm just going to poke and prod Norwood and ask him some questions. And anyway, without further ado, Norwood, I think his memory from talking to him starts about 5 years of age. And like I said, he was born in 1921, and he can remember things that happened a long time ago and would not miss a beat. So, Norwood, I'll just ask you first of all if you can tell the crowd what your earliest memories of the depot in Romney are.
I guess my earliest ones is riding a Ford truck, old Model T, had side curtains on it. It's in the wintertime, cold as anything. You had to have a big old blanket on you. And the windshield wiper you had to run by hand. And that's my earliest recollection. And then we get down to the station. Let's see. I guess it was, who was it built? Finished in only 1884, I think it was. And so it was probably at its peak during my time, because trucks hadn't come in yet. There was nothing delivered much to Romney by automobile. And the Model Ts was about the only thing out then. And so it was a busy place. And my dad had a contract with the U.S. government to haul the mail from Romney to the train every day. Oh, yeah. And yeah, that's the station there.
That's the station without any motorized vehicles. That's the picture that you're referring to.
They were probably, all the stations were a little alike, some of them a little bigger, some of them smaller, but had two waiting rooms, one for black and one for white. And the station master or agent was in between, his office was. Then there's another office in the back, on the side of that housed the Railway Express agent. And that was a separate company that contracted with the railroad to haul perishables. Things that people needed in a hurry or was perishable. And then on back of that was a big warehouse that handled all the big freight, big items. And that came in a truck, in a car on the railroad. And of course this railroad run from Green Spring, which is the main line of the B&O, from Baltimore to Cincinnati. And it went all the way to Moorefield and Petersburg. And this train had a boxcar loaded with freight. And it was divided up between the three cities. And we had a black person who was a very jolly person who unloaded the freight while they waited there for Romney before they went to Moorefield, and put it in the warehouse. And then getting back to the mail, that was the first thing that had to be taken off the train and delivered. And they had a mail clerk on the train who sorted the mail for all the different places. And I think that some small places even, it was sorted, and some small places even had a hook out, and it would catch the mail bag and they wouldn't have to stop for it. And of course the mail, I can remember one thing about the mail. Every fall, I don't know, I'm sorry. Get carried
You
away.
don't want to miss a word.
All right.
So you better hold it
All right.
close.
Every fall, the Sears and Roebuck and the Montgomery Ward catalogs came in. And there's a whole truckload of that. I mean, you couldn't hardly get it on one truck. But because everybody bought everything then by catalog. There was no, there's a lot of stores in Romney, don't get me wrong, but anyway, people used it. They getting back, then the Railway Express was the perishable one. So my dad would deliver the mail, come back down and get the Railway Express. He had a contract to do that. And it consisted of everything for the town of Romney. I can remember a few items on there. When I was real small, I'd sit in the back of the truck and ride all around and push the mail back, push all the stuff back so my dad didn't have to get in the truck. And I remember one box, a little square pasteboard box, was in the summertime was always cold. I couldn't figure out what was in it. And it went to the New Century Hotel. Later on, I found out that was frozen bird's eye peas. I never realized they had them back in those days. They weren't in any store. It's just for hotels, I guess, and whatnot. And, let's see. Going back then he delivered that, and he'd come back and get the freight. And Drone would load it on the truck for him, and he'd deliver that over town. And he did that every day for, I don't know, quite a few years. And let's see, what else we got there? Oh yeah, I'll describe some of the things around the station. Across the tracks, there's a big packing shed that belonged to the J.G. Slaughter Company. And I think Mr. Slaughter would go to New York and get carload orders for apples or peaches, whatever, some fruit. And then he'd come back and buy them off the local merchants. And then they'd bring them down there, and they'd sort them out and put them in fancy boxes and put them on a car. And I think Mr. Ford Johnson, I think his grandson's here in town, and not here now, worked for Mr. Slaughter. Then on down north of the station, behind it, there's a big frame building, and it was a wholesale food distributors, where they got food in with all kind of things in with the train, and then sold them to the local merchants. They come down and get them.
Kennewigs. Kennewigs?
Kennewigs.
Kennewigs.
The BG, yeah. That's been going a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, what else we got on there?
Okay. You were going to talk about the express agent.
Oh, yeah, the express agent. The express agent was Mr. Goldsboro, lived down near the grade school, right across from it. And he had a son who was the express agent. And I guess what happened is he was caught embezzling some money. And I was just real small, but I can remember that he came up to the Green Palm restaurant one day for lunch, I guess, and went upstairs into the bathroom, shot himself, committed suicide. That was quite a lot of talk around town.
And you want to tell them about the area and town where they were from and Goldsboro Avenue?
Oh, yeah. Well, Goldsboro Avenue was part of Mr. Goldsboro's property. In fact, he owned a whole lot that went from Main Street to Rosemary Lane. And all those all the houses on Goldsboro Avenue was his cow pasture. And he rented that out to somebody with his cows that sold milk. In fact, there's several places in Romney back then that had cow pastures, and you go around to his house and get a quart of milk for 10 cents.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interrupt Norwood for just a second. I didn't mention there's photographs up here on the table. We were hoping to put them all on the screen, but we weren't able to do that. That, of course, is the pictures of the depot, one shot with the train there. But there's other pictures here. I think the ones here were provided by Dr. Calvert. And we thank her for that. I also have one from Jenny Keadle that's here. It's got a little bit of the history, and I'm going to read that to you in just a moment. And then we have a whole notebook that we haven't seen from Fred Fields and his wife, or mother. I'm sorry. Young and a notebook that I haven't seen the pictures yet. But the history that's on the picture that I got from Jenny Keadle says February 23rd, 1871, the South Branch Railroad Company was incorporated. Then in 1871, the same year, construction between Green Spring and Romney began. The railroad progress was made during that year. In 1883, the B&O agreed to complete the construction and operate the railroad. In September 1, 1884, the B&O was open for traffic from Green Spring to Romney, which consisted of 16.29 miles. And in 1884, the Romney Depot was completed. And in November 12, 1912, the B&O acquired the South Branch Railroad Company. So Norwood wasn't around in 1871. So that's why I had to read that. But let's see.
I have a question. Norwood, what role did the railroad play or have with the West Virginia School for the deaf and blind over here? Did the teachers go back and forth and the students ride the train?
There's a lot of passengers that used the train back then. In fact, that's the only, I don't think the bus was around. Greyhound bus hadn't come around yet. And so that was about the only transportation you had to go long distance. I mean, the cars then were just coming out. Horse and buggy, 25 miles probably as far as you ever go in those things. And the cars was just coming out, and they were faster than the horse and buggies, but not that much more. And so everybody used the train to go very far. And every fall, there'd be a lot of the teachers that taught at West Virginia School from deaf and blind were from all over West Virginia. And so they'd come in by train. There's a big drove of those and a lot of baggage and trunks, big old trunks. Every one of them had a big trunk, and you had to deliver those. And yeah, man, that was quite a time. Yeah.
Kids would come and the only time they got to go home was at Christmas.
What's that?
During the school year, early on, they only got to get back home at Christmas time.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That's about right. Yeah. Now during the '36 flood,
Difference now.
the flood took out the road bridge down the Blue Beach Tavern from here north. So there's no way out. The only way you could get to Springfield or Green Spring from there was, well, you could go around Jersey Mountain, but so the high school, there was kids from Green Spring and Springfield that went to Romney High. And so they all rode the train for about a year until they got the bridge back in. Every day, night and day. Yeah.
Is that like one train per day or two trains a day?
It's just one train a day. One train came in, went all the way to Moorfield, back to Green Spring once a day.
And
That's
then
it.
back at night?
No, that was it.
Oh,
That was it. So the kids
Just-
stayed.
No, they came up on the train in the morning and went back in the evening on the train. Yeah, yeah.
So the train came from Green Spring and Springfield with the kids, dropped them off at Romney in the morning, and went on to Moorfield. And
Yes.
then came back.
Came
in the
back,
evening,
yes,
picked
in
them
the
up.
afternoon, in the evening, yeah.
Probably
Did
had-
they have to take them to school did they have trucks in or horse and buggy?
then.
Yeah, bus.
They had buses then, I think.
so that train went to
They
Cumberland?
may have walked, they had buses in 36, yes.
I remember reading where the horse and buggy would meet the train and take people up to the New Century or out to the Hampshire Club. Do you remember how long the horse and buggy were they still picking them up as horse and buggy when you were young?
No, the horse and buggy days is gone when I was young, that I remember, yeah.
Talk about.
What was the route of the train? Because you're saying it goes here and back, I'm wondering, was there a roundhouse for it, or was it a circle, or?
No, there's no roundhouse that I know of, no. The only thing in Romney is they had a Y there, a turnaround, the train can turn around, go back out, but there's no maintenance, huh? And I don't know where they got their maintenance. The only maintenance I can think is a roundhouse in Cumberland.
But the route of the train went as far as Moorfield, or did it go to Petersburg?
It went to Petersburg. Went to Petersburg, yeah.
Okay. And then did it turn around there, or just go backwards?
No, it turned around there. They had to turn around there.
And then,
That was down in Shaw Road.
But they didn't train it. They didn't turn the whole train around. They just turned the engine. Yeah, hooked on the other end. Yeah.
so then it came back to Moorfield and Romney, and then Springfield and Green Spring. They go further than that?
I don't think so.
Not at the time.
No, it wasn't part of the B&O. They just connected up with the B&O. Now, I remember some of the conductors. There's a conductor that there's two of them lived in Romney. And, oh yeah, another thing, there was a restaurant that I didn't mention.
I'm just trying to see if I can keep it
Oh.
from making that noise.
I didn't mention, there was a restaurant in that station. There's a lady that run it, and I guess she made enough off that of the train crew and the passengers coming in and out. Because that's the only thing that's down there.
That was in the depot, or was that a separate building from the depot?
What's that?
Was that in the depot, or was that a separate?
No, it was separate. It was across the tracks. It was a separate building.
Other side of the
Yeah,
tracks.
privately owned, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So how many cars was the train normally?
What?
How many cars in the train normally?
Well, as much freight as there, they could probably haul as much freight as, they could get. They just take one engine,
So
one
they hauled
engine.
freight and passengers at the same
Yeah.
time?
Passenger and train, yeah.
What businesses did it serve down in, or up in Petersburg and all that? Do we know?
Well, later on, there's a lot of chicken business, and they hauled food in for those.
Right.
And then there was, that part I don't know. I'm sure that they hauled some timber out probably, and that's all that I could remember.
And the fruit
What's that?
the fruit you mentioned earlier. the
Yeah,
fruit.
oh yeah, the fruit, yeah. Every spring they had hauled a lot of fruit, yeah.
Mr. Haines, I see this picture and I know where Depot Hill is. Did this sit right in front of Depot Hill, or where did this train station sit in Romney?
You know where the road to Station Hill is, because they
Yeah.
only go across the tracks. So right where you turn the tracks,
Uh-huh.
it was, this upper end was right there. The track comes straight down and around. There's this Aller house down there, and then there's one up on the hill that's there today. And there's two ladies that lived in there, Ann Hughes and Pearl Shapiro. And every morning, there's an old gentleman, he's pretty old when I was young, and his name was Bob Rady, and he had an old service station that used to be for horse and buggies. It was turned over for cars, very small, but anyway, I think he loafed in there every day. But anyway, he came down all dressed up, took these two ladies to work every day. And one of them ran the local telegraph office, was in charge of that. Another was a teacher up the school for deaf and blind. And he never missed a day.
And as an aside to what Norwood is saying now, I remember our dad saying he worked for the B&O Railroad in the tires down in Okanoka, and also not Okanoka, Pea Creek, Patterson Creek, and also Z Tower and Kaiser, and he was a telegrapher. And he learned telegraphy from one of these ladies, Anna Hughes, taught him telegraphy before he went to work in B&O after the war.
Now, on the way to the station, going down Bolton Street and turning on Station Road, there's a big old building, you know, there's a mill right along Bolton Street. And in behind that mill was a little lean-to, and there's a couple coal-fired generators, and that furnished the electricity for Romney back then. And I don't know how long that was there, but right across the street was a great big frame building, and there's a barrel factory. And it was open for another, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, and finally it closed up. I don't know what they used the barrels for, but there's big barrels, and they made there every day.
And I believe the Romney Furniture Factory was there, people remember that? Was that the same? I don't know if it was the same building or not, it was the same location that you mentioned.
Oh, yeah, it could have been, yeah.
Right across the street, if those of you remembered Arnold's Mill, the corner of Bolton and Depot Street, and then it would have been across the street to the north it's now an empty lot.
Yeah, it's just an empty lot, right, yep.
Norwood, there's this picture in Romney that I've seen on probably Charlie's site, because he has a wonderful history site that puts lots of pictures on. And it's of a lot of sheep coming down Main Street, and it's real dusty, and they're driving the sheep. Did they take those to the depot to be shipped?
Probably so, yeah.
Is that where they were going that day?
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you've seen that picture.
That
It's
is
a
back
wonderful
there,
picture.
yeah.
I don't have it here, but I think you have it on your site.
Yeah, things were a lot different back then.
And do you remember any later agents that came after Mr. Goldsboro?
Yeah, there's Pat Patterson came, he was there for a couple of years. And then there was another gentleman, let me see, what was his name? Oh, Fred Catlett. He was there probably during the I'd say late 30s. Then there was a gentleman there before I'm familiar with that, because he lived up from us, GWS Grove. And he lived in Sarah Morgan's house. He might have been the one to build it.
Hey Norwood, what was your average wages back then?
Average wage?
Average wage.
You know, the Depression came along there in '29, and we was pretty bad off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back then people worked for $30 a month. Yeah. In fact, I think when I went to work at Green Spring, I got $135 a month.
Norwood was telling me today about delivering newspapers. You're telling what your wage was in for delivering newspapers in Romney. He had about 100 customers?
Yeah, 100 customers, yeah, and the evening Times, Cumberland Times, sold for 2 cents a piece daily, and Sunday was a nickel. And you got 1 cent and sent a company 1 penny back to the company.
How big was the paper? How many pages in the paper?
Oh, sometimes it was pretty, Sunday was a thick one. Yeah, I had to make 2 trips with my bicycle, yeah.
I'm an old newsboy myself.
Yeah. If you told me this today, I missed it. You told me you got 1 cent when you got paid 2 cents and sent 1 cent to the paper. How about on Sundays?
It was a nickel, and I don't know, I can't remember how much we got for that, probably 2 and cent 3 and something like that. Yeah.
You did get a bonus on Sundays.
And you had to keep all the records. You're responsible for any loss, and it's all on your shoulders. Today, whoever delivers it, it's all mailed in, and you have no financial
So
problems.
the papers come on the railroad, or is there?
What's that?
Did your papers come down from Cumberland on the
They
railroad
came over truck.
by truck?
Every day, yeah. This is probably about 19, 35 when I started delivering them.
So there was a morning paper and an evening?
There's a morning paper and the evening paper. There wasn't very many morning papers, so I didn't deliver those. They was just in the drugstores.
So that made you about 14 years old at the time?
Yeah,
you started?
yeah.
And how long did you do that?
I did it for 4 years, I think. All years, all during high school, yeah.
Did you save that money that you earned?
Well, I tried to. But those old chocolate sundaes at the drugstore was very tempting.
You talked about a gentleman that loaded and unloaded the freight and other things off the trains. Tell us a little bit more about him. I don't know whether you mentioned the name or not, but I remember hearing this name before.
Yeah, Jerome Jackson. He lived on the, he lived right across from the mill there. It was just he and his wife. And he was a very hard worker and very intelligent person, really. Nice person. He'd do anything for you.
Oh, and you also told me about a conductor that you made friends with.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Zirk. He offered to take me to Moorfield on a trip. So he even packed the lunches and all and invited me to go with him. And he took me all the way to Moorfield and let me go up in the engine and stay for a while and see how they operate the engine and shovel the coal in. And I got to run around for probably an hour in Petersburg over the town. Quite an experience for me.
Did they make you shovel coal for that trip?
No, I didn't. I wasn't big enough to handle a shovel that.
Was it that train engine? Was that the train engine that you were in?
Yeah, that's probably the one I looked looks bigger than that one.
You know what?
That's probably a lot earlier than when I went.
Norwood, you were also telling me about the automobile industry when it came into being around here and the part that the railroad had to play with that.
Yeah, that's right. I guess back then, the highways weren't all that good to Detroit. And the cars were all shipped to the dealers, were all shipped in here by rail. They'd come in and they'd put the car on the side rail, and then the owners would have to unload the cars. They had so long, to unload those a day or two. And so they'd come down and unload the cars and take them to the garage. And I think they probably got 5 or 6 cars in one box car. They was all put in there, and they would jack one end up real high and then run another one in under. That gave more room, and it's all. Then they had to wedge them in there with wood called dunnage, so they wouldn't move around on the curves and stuff. But yeah.
What year would that have been?
Well, this was in the 20s.
In the 20s?
Now, I don't know when the Pennsylvania Turnpike was built, but after it was built,
30s, I think.
30s, yeah.
30s, mid-30s.
Okay. After that, well, they would go up and drive them back. Drive them down the Pennsylvania Turnpike to Cumberland, get off at exit and drive down to Cumberland.
And who were the car dealers in Romney and surroundings that they delivered the automobiles to at that time?
Well, it was probably Pancake Chevrolet or Ford Motor Company, run by Jack Powell at that time. Then later on, there's a lot of other agencies that came to town. Reynolds had sold Plymouths up at the north end, and Schuler had the Chryslers. That's about the earliest that I remember. But before that, I think there's a lot of agencies that went out of business. Because it's all kinds of cars other than Ford and Chevrolet that was made back in the early days. I can remember one, a Whippet and all this, you know, all kinds.
My dad talked about cutting up a Rio,
Rio.
yeah, and sold it for scrap, cut up with a bullet.
So back in the 20s, when you walked down the street, how many vehicles were there as opposed to like horses?
Well, in my time, it's all vehicles.
It was all vehicles?
Yeah, very seldom a horse.
By the 20s then?
Yeah, it's all vehicles, yep. And in my early times, why, I don't remember too many Model Ts, but I do, you know, I knew some of my relatives had them and I rode in them, but I was just pretty young then. And then the Model A's came out, and then the V8s came out in the 30s, I think.
Okay.
What was your first car?
That I owned myself is a 41 Chevrolet 5-passenger coupe. Put 125,000 miles on it.
Boy, I'm surprised you got that.
Yeah, I took that one to the service with me in Tampa, Florida. Yeah.
Norwood, were there any refrigerated box cars at that time? And was there any need for them?
They was later on, yeah. The refrigeration, I don't think came out until,
It would have been ice, right? Ice?
well, ice. Yeah, now that I don't remember. I don't remember that, but I'm sure there was. But it didn't come to Romney very often that I know of. Yeah.
You're also telling me about some different things that were delivered here by train, like in the funeral business. Tell them about that.
Well, yeah, all the caskets came in by train and had to be delivered by truck. And I remember one place, they get these steel bolts in, and a BT Racing, BT Racing, yeah, had a hardware store, and he was also an undertaker that lived on the corner where, what place is it?
Yeah.
Maine and Marshall,
Yeah, Maine and Marshall, right up from the post office.
where the,
Yeah.
I do have a picture of that store.
oh, do you?
Do you? Yeah.
Thank you. I know I do at home.
I could just see his logo. We stab them and slap them. We stab them and slap them.
Okay.
While he's looking for that, one of the things, we all know that Camp Walker is out off of Route 50. So many of the Confederate reunions were held here in Hampshire County. So the train was very heavily used for those reunions. And there's a picture there in the far end, if a lot of you want to look at that later. And Charlie Hall would probably know more about that picture. I took it from his son. But I think it might have been a reunion where all the people were coming into town. Can you imagine that many people down at the depot? And then I guess they would take cars, or I don't know how they would get to Camp Walker. At that point, there was old cars. What year do they look to be?
Well,
Norwood?
Let me say something about that.
Early
I've also
20s.
come recently to believe that could be a World War I picture.
Oh,
Because when the boys left for camp, and they left in groups sometimes as much as 30 or 40, they had a send-off for them. So I'm not sure whether that is a Confederate reunion or whether that is a World War I taking off for training camp. If anybody knows what that is, please let me know. I found the original at the Davis History House, and it had been torn into about 5 pieces. And I had to stitch it back together with Photoshop. I have never seen another copy, and I don't know of anybody else that's ever seen one. So if anybody here knows what that is, please let us know.
Oh, I only see 2 American flags in here, nothing Confederate. Probably one WW1.
Oh, that's a good option.
Well, and also talking about the dead, different things that he delivered.
Yeah, well, I probably got all that, yeah. Oh, yeah, we have Powell Motor Company there. It was on the corner of Main and, at the stoplight. And I remember that, they had the gas pumps right on along the road, and all the front was showroom, and they had cars in there on display. And I remember when we were kids, they sold Gulf gasoline. Well, Gulf Company put out a little funny paper once a week, and 3 or 4 pages, a small one. And as kids would always stop in there and get a free copy of it and read that. And then they had a little toy car in there that we all had, maybe some of us had one time or another. Of course, it was pedaled around with the pedals. Well, this one had an electric motor in it, and that fascinated us. We'd love to get in that thing. Remember that?
And where was that again, Mr. Haines?
What was,
Where was that located?
it was on the corner of Main and
High Street.
High Street. It was,
Oh, where the theater
it was where if you know where the theater is,
Yes,
that
okay.
it was that building.
Thank you.
Yeah, the theater used to be down in the center of the block, other block. And they just moved to put the theater in there probably 1940, 41, someplace in there. And then after,
And Ebert's 5 and 10 cent store was in there, on 2 floors.
yeah, after Ford Motor Company moved out of town, why, Ebert's had a 10-cent store down in close to Green Palm Restaurant. And they moved up there and had the little room downstairs and all the upstairs. They had a big five and dime, and it was there for quite a while before it went out of business.
Now, were you around when the fire occurred down at the depot?
No, I don't remember any fire down there myself. I remember the fire in probably 26 or 27 on Main Street across from the Green Palm Restaurant. It burnt down, I think, two buildings there. I think somebody had a wood stove upstairs of an apartment caught fire, and it burnt two buildings there. And I don't know what stores were in them at that time, but it's where Coleman Fishers used to be, and A&P used to be in there too. And that's, Romney did not have a fire company then. That prodded them to get going. That's when they got a fire company.
Mike, I talked to Mike Smith about the fire down at the depot. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that fire, and it was, and I was trying to remember the date, but I can only coincide at what point one of their fire engines blew up and they had to replace it. So it would have been prior to 1966.
Yeah, it was
when
in
the
the
fire happened
1960s.
down.
I think we were both probably in Morgantown at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I took some pictures of what remained afterwards, so.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, but I don't have any pictures of the building before.
Right.
Well, I have one picture that I could find, and then I couldn't find it for this. And it's a picture of both of Romney's pumpers just standing by at the end of the fire after it took out the roller rink, and it took out the warehouse to the north, and it took out I believe it took out the auction barn at the same
I was
time.
gonna say, well, Willard.
It all went together.
Willard's auction house was there.
Yep. So that's all that was left, and the biggest concern was the 10 tons of nitrate that was stored in the B&O. Yeah. So there were at least one piece of equipment just keeping water on that, you know, that would have been kind of, yeah.
And Mike was also telling me about speaking of the history of the depot, about its demise and when it was sold. That he remembers some details about that. You want to share that with
Well,
us?
I understood it was sold for $5 and to be torn down. And there was, and inside that building was enough slate to re-roof the whole depot. Brand new slate on pallets. And some guy got it for like $5. That was the story. And I lived over on that hill there at that time when we first came home, and yeah, that was a good, strong building.
Yeah, it's a shame somebody didn't get that and restore it and have it today there. Because it was it was well built, it would last forever, really.
There's none of the depots left, right? None of the depots in Hampshire County, they're all gone?
I don't think they're all going, I think there's some around, I don't know, really. I don't know.
Why was it torn down?
No, it
No, it
didn't
didn't
burn.
burn. I don't know why it was torn down. What, does anybody know the decision-making process as far as the depot is concerned, why it was?
Well, one day it was there, and the next day they were in there working on it, so,
Well, who
And we
bought
had-
it, Mike? Did Willard Malcolm buy that?
no.
What did Willard do down there?
He owned
He owned the
He owned
skating
the-
rink, right?
the building right, that's set right under the road.
Yeah, he had an auction down
Yeah.
It was across the tracks under the road that goes to, on up to Depot Hill. Yeah.
Do you know who owned it?
there. Connie used to live over there. Do you have some memories of the depot?
I don't know.
Yeah. Do you remember when the depot was sold? No.
I wonder if the railroad just put it out of business because they didn't want the competition. Could be, you know.
Yeah.
Well, the railroad stopped the passenger service, so there was nothing coming in. There hadn't been. There's been a freight depot over at Canvas. So they didn't need the passenger depot in Romney.
They probably didn't want anybody else using it.
Well, the Romney planing mill got all of their wood shipped in here by train.
Yeah,
That was placed, their place was down on Sioux Lane. Was that Sioux Lane? Right down from me, there was a big planing mill.
yeah, I know Romney Plain Mill, yeah.
And they got their lumber shipped by train there. Because they said it would get warped and stuff, and they'd have to take like saws down there sometimes because it was so warped to cut it to get it out. That was a story I heard.
I think Hampshire Co-op got a lot of their supplies in through by train at first.
The wood must have not been killed right at that time,
I
because
think so.
it must have been sidetracked someplace for a long time in hot weather. Because we cover everything.
I have a question. You remember the name on the side of your dad's truck?
What's that?
Your dad's Model T, or whether didn't he at a later time have a Model A or a BB?
Yeah, I think it's a 1926 Chevrolet.
Okay. Well, anyway, one of those trucks, I can't remember which it is, the name on the side of the truck, do you remember it?
All I can know is Arlo Haines. I mean,
It's A.R. Haines Transfer.
Oh, was it? A.R. Haines, okay.
I got that
All right.
picture somewhere of that
truck.
Let me say something about that truck. I think I got my license and he still had that truck. I was 15 and it had a steering wheel about that big around in there, old wooden one. And it had mechanical brakes and you had to estimate how much pressure to put on it when you got near what you wanted because it took it forever to stop after I used to stand up on it, hold the steering wheel with my hands like this and it still kept going. I've come up right this pretty close to anything has stopped. Yeah, let me say, that truck came in, I don't know how it came in, but it was just a cab and the framework. Well, he took it down to, I think, H.O. Giffen at a blacksmith shop on the way to the station out here. The building's still there. It's an electric company now, electric shop, and it's closed up. But he made a frame. He made the truck bed for it. You got oak lumber, and he made all the ironworks himself. The bars that fasten it to it, and in fact, he made the bed. That's one of his specialties.
Do you remember you and your dad hauling Coca-Cola syrup uptown in wooden barrels? Because he's the one that delivered the Coca-Cola syrup for the Coke plant when it was on 41 Bolton Street.
Yeah, I remember that. I can't say that I remember the Coke, but I'm sure he did. But yeah, I can remember that Coke plant there. Yeah. Mr. Friend worked there, and I don't know, I think your dad came to town in the 30s, didn't he?
Granddad.
Yeah.
Granddad did,
Yeah, took over the plant. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just one big old bottling works back there in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
And his office is right as you go in the building. And my cousin called him Sheet Panel, delivered Coke all over our place. Yeah. Yeah.
He bottled it at night and delivered it in the daytime.
Is that what they did? I didn't know.
Yeah, in the early days.
Huh. That was way back there. Because it had,
Okay.
wasn't good for you.
Oh, sheep.
But I think it had something else. I can't think of what it was now.
Codeine.
It was
Codeine.
codeine, right? Yeah, yeah. But I think they took that out later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Back in my days, you couldn't. All the stores and everything was closed on Sunday. Nobody did any work. In fact, you couldn't even mow the grass, make any noise on Sunday. And then cars came along, and the service stations, you had to have gas, so they was open on Sunday. And they all had coolers in, loaded with pop, Coca-Cola, and whatever. So that's where we always went for our Coke. And back in the Depression, why, Cokes was 5 cents, but nobody had 5 cents. And I can remember many days that I'd roam the streets of Romney looking for an empty Coke bottle so I could turn it in for 2 cents, and then get 3 of them, I could buy a Coke. Yeah, there's no loose change laying around during the Depression days.
One of the names that I heard Mr. Haines talk about that reminded me that I had heard it when I was a little girl was Mr. Litton. And didn't you tell me he was a conductor?
He was a conductor on the train, yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell them where his house was?
You know where Loudon Thompson's house is? On Bolton Street? It was right beside of it on Bolton Street.
Next to where Gary's home was.
Yeah, between Gary Long and and Loudon Thompson, yeah. I'm pretty sure he might have built that one, had it built, because it was new when he lived in it.
Gary said Max Seville built it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
That's where Mr. Warndorf lived too, isn't it?
What?
Isn't that where Mr. Warndorf lived later on? No?
Yes.
It was,
Oh, okay.
I'm on the wrong street.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Was anything saved from the depot?
Not that I know
Machines or-
of, no.
Does anybody know where that train is now? The engine?
That's probably in the scrap bin.
Actually, that engine may have been used only to bring the cars to that depot. Because there was an interesting comment about how the train came to Romney. It says the train was pulled up to Romney. And if you look at the track bed, there is a very steep grade from the main line up by Bob Mayhew's house onto where it would then come on up to the depot. And a regular engine couldn't get it up there. So I think that engine there was specifically used to help pull the train into Romney, and it was not used to go to Norwood or Springfield.
I have a large picture of that on the vast of that engine. Here it is. There's a large picture of it. Enlarged it.
I don't remember the numbers of the engines, that's one thing I don't know.
It was built in Baltimore, that engine was, and it was brought in here from Baltimore. It's in that picture.
Any other questions that anyone wants to ask?
Norwood, why don't you tell them how busy Romney was on Saturday evening?
Oh. Well, when I was a kid, every night, there'd be such a crowd in town that you could not walk up the street. Us kids would have to get out in the road and walk. I mean, everybody in Hampshire County, I think, was in Romney on Saturday night. Of course, there was all kinds of stores, and everything was open till 9 o'clock, and it was just booming. I mean, every store, everything was open till 9.
When Norwood and I were talking today, we talked about this, even though it didn't apply to the depot store, but we talked about the businesses on Main Street and the fact that people would bring their cars in and would park them, get a parking place on Friday, so that they would have a bird's eye view when all the action was taking place on Saturday. And, so I have some suspicion that a lot of them brought their cars or more often their pickup trucks in, parked them, and then got a ride home to somebody else, and then came back the next day for the activities and the festivities.
Yeah, every Saturday night, they had a Romney band would play at the courthouse. It played for a couple hours and with several animations, but everybody attended that. I mean,
Saturday night, was it?
That was Saturday night, yeah.
What kind of music did they play?
Well, all kinds, yeah.
I think Bill Lovins was in that band, wasn't he? I think it was his son, his brother, one of the Lovins was in that band.
Bill Levy?
Bill Lovins was in the band,
Oh, I don't remember
that owned
that.
Green Palm. Well, I lived next door to his mother, and she used to tell me that he played an instrument in the band and that they played it to her.
Yeah, I remember some of them. John Snorr played the trombone, and there's a Parker lived around on Main back street there. I don't know what he played, but there's quite a few of them. They must have been 20 people or more.
Who played the trumpet, do you remember? Who played the trumpet?
I can't think of his name. He lived on Charlevoix there in that little brick house. Doherty,
Darty.
yeah. In fact, I think he led the band. He was the leader. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was good. He was a good trumpet player, yeah.
Was Hampshire a dry county back then?
What's
Was
that?
Hampshire a dry county back then? As far as alcohol, was it a dry county or did they have alcohol in Hampshire?
It was dry in the 20s, I think, but Prohibition was, I don't know, I forget what year Prohibition was ended. Can't remember. But I do remember that all the neighbors around where I lived always made home brew. Everybody had home brew, and so I guess that was during the Depression. And they always made us kids root beer. It was fermented. They had to bottle it and let it set for a while. And it was kind of, it's just a soft drink. But they always made that for the kids.
From the sassafras tree.
What'd you do for fun when you were a kid here?
What's that?
What'd you do for fun when you were a child here?
Oh, I hate to get into that.
The statute of limitations is over, you're good.
We're all adults.
I do remember one thing. I was pretty small, but I was always messing around with a hammer and nails. And I always went to the hardware store and had a good supply of nails on hand. And my dad, from building a house, had a whole pile of lumber piled in behind the garage, the leftovers. And I'd go in there and sort out and get some lumber to work with. And I remember I made a little truck, I guess you'd call it, wooden truck. I got some wheels off of an old toy of some kind, and I put on the rear of it, and I had a little tongue that I made that would steer, and I put an axle on that, and I had the hood. I had some real thin plywood off of a refrigerator box, real thin, and I put over that. I had a little cattle on it and a bed, and rails around that. It was, if I had to say so myself, halfway decent. Anyway, our neighbor lived up the street. And I can remember my mother would say, and Mr. Powell worked up at J. Brady Thompson, a big hardware store, they handled everything. Anyway, she'd show up and she'd tell me to tell Mr. Powell to give you a good chicken. Well, I'd go up and tell him I wanted the chicken. So he'd go in the cage. They had a whole cage up there in the wing of the store. He picked out a good chicken, took it out on the back there and chopped its head off, put it in a bag and put her in my truck bed, and I brought her home.
And J. Brady Thompson's building was where the Sheets is now.
Yeah, where Sheets, yeah. It was a big building. In fact, Mr. Heathwell, I think, had a store in the front of that. Yeah, I remember delivering papers in there to him. Yeah. But I think he's about ready to go out of business because
Was that the store that faced on Main Street?
yeah,
And it was later
Yeah.
occupied by Tiny Serball, back in the Army Navy.
yeah, the Army Navy, was in there, yeah.
But that was
Yeah.
on the street, a little piece from the Brady Thompson's. Brady Thompson's was on the corner, and Tiny's was up the street somewhere.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Right next to it.
And then Libby's hot dog stand was next to it.
Yeah, there in the little corner. Remember it like
You remember that, Libby's hot dog store?
Everybody.
Libby was a coffee name.
I must have been going that, yeah.
Sure, my coffee.
Yeah. I left in 52, yeah. So I was going there.
And it ended up, Norwood, telling, you came back here in 1960? Or no, you were 60 when you retired.
82.
82, and built a house here, and it ended up being right next door to where you grew up, right?
Yeah. Well, it's on a lot that was owned by my aunt, my dad's sister. Sheet panels mother. Yeah. Yes, small place.
Small town, but
Yep.
lots of memories.
Everybody knows everybody. Yeah, except now. It's altogether different now.
Well, I'm,
Or maybe it's just me.
With him and ask him a few questions. It's been a real joy just to get him to know him better. And he's promised me that we're going to take a tour of Main Street and we're going to record it from one end to the other. And he's going to tell me the stories about different places in Romney on Main Street. And so maybe he can come back and I can ask him some more questions another time.
that's a great idea.